Welcome back. Still with me here in the studio is Mr. Atedo Peterside, the founder and chairman of Anam Business Jets Limited. We're talking about corporate governance, NNPC, and the future of NNPC in Nigeria. So before we went to break, we were talking about sort of the way forward and the future of NNPC. I would like you to sort of comment on some of the, we started this out with the unwritten rules that are being broken every day. What do you see as the way forward, especially from a corporate governance perspective?
You know, I explained earlier that I think a lot, saying the obvious, is on the president's table. Mm-hmm. He's got to decide whether he is able to handle the thousands of issues that are brought on his table every day. I suspect he will have better control if there were arrangements to reduce the volume of what comes to the president and the presidency. That's a general recommendation, which in Abuja has always been taboo, because there's the feeling that you want power at the center, so you could take over the center, therefore double into NNPC, double into everything, take control. The last guys did it, so it's my turn. I have to find a way to double.
So the first recommendation is for the president to resign as the oil minister?
I think what I would say is that dismantle the present clumsy arrangements. There are a number of arrangements that can work. But what if you have a bad system, a clumsy arrangement, even with good people, you will have this kind of friction. Conversely, if you have
bad people, a clear arrangement.
With a clear arrangement, it will not work. You need a combination of the two. I think the president believes a lot about looking for people. And perhaps, I guess, not so much about putting in place very good systems. You need a combination of the two. Good systems that bring clarity, accountability, and transparency, and then good people. You know, we need to pursue those two sets of things. Right now, the one set, the good systems, clarity, and everything is clearly missing. There's confusion. Nobody really knows who's in charge of what.
So, sorry, just picking up your point on people and the president and the appointments of some of the people. One of the things that's been in the newspapers is the people actually at the center of the scandal, which is the president, which is the the group managing director, and the minister of state, which is a South indigent. And so there's been a lot of talk in the papers that the North is actually squeezing out the one Southerner that is in the NNPC. That is a player in the NNPC world. What is your take on that?
You see, all that is unfortunate, because this is what happens when you have clumsy arrangements. Then people can it opens the door for people to now leap in and impugn motives and so on. And that's why I say that the way forward for me is to go back to first principles. Sadly, and I've said it already too many times in this interview, the arrangement should be about better oversight. Now, that's what you should be pursuing. But in reality, in Nigeria, there's a hidden motive usually, which is how do we get Aso Rock to be in day-to-day control of NNPC? I said Aso Rock, not the president. Yes. Because the president himself may not necessarily have that aspiration. But as soon as an arrangement brings 1,000 files to his desk, people have to tell him what is inside those files. And then they get a chance to influence what goes into all the files. And the president is human. Even if you were the president tomorrow, if I bring you 1,000 files, you wouldn't know a lot about all the contents. You wouldn't know the details of an oil swap arrangement and so on. So people are getting your signature, largely with the intention of roping you in, so they can say that this thing was approved by the president, not by them. So and that's what you must clarify. So
the president has some serious decisions to make in the next couple of weeks.
Definitely.
One of them is, there's a rumor that there's some reshuffling of the cabinet happening. And there's obviously that's going to affect the arrangements here. What are your takes on what the president has to do in the next couple of weeks, especially when it comes to putting the right people in the right... You started with the people conversation, so I want to build on that.
But the good thing is that this matter has blown open, and it's not something you can just wish away. When I spoke about some unwritten rules, one of them was trust. It looks as if there's been a breakdown of trust already between
all the players,
the group MD and the Minister of State and so on. So when trust has broken down, you can either try and rebuild it, or you can accept that it has broken down irretrievably, in which case you may have to change some of the actors. Because if human beings don't trust each other, asking them to rebuild trust takes plenty of time. Trust, it takes a long time to build trust, but you can break it down in a very short while. It takes a long time to rebuild it. So the reasons why many CEOs work well with chairmen is because they trust each other.
So basically, this issue has blown open. There's rumors on the street that both the group managing director and the minister for state are going to be out of the play. I mean, you've said there's a breakdown of trust.
Well, you know that.
Out of play.
I don't know that.
I think there's a breakdown of trust. There has to be a rebuilding of this organization. In rebuilding, what type of people, when you talk about people, what type of people do we need to be looking for?
It's almost as if, from what I'm saying, it's almost as if the two of them were set up. They were putting an arrangement that was not naturally going to bring them into conflict.
Sure.
So even if you remove two of them and you bring a different pair, if you again put them in an arrangement where one is summoned to the villa to discuss things without the other and so on and so forth, sooner or later again, trust will break down. So this is why I'm saying that you have to do more than change personnel. You also have to go back and say, can these arrangements work? The only way they are going to work, like I said, is if the presidency is not seeking to undermine the board of NNPC. The presidency must accept that. Please let me explain, because controlling the board is different from undermining the board. If I've explained it, like if I want to control the board, I walk through the board, I call the board chairman, I discuss with him, get his buy-in on things. That's not undermining the board. That is the correct way to work with the board. Undermining the board comes when you start taking decisions, which are board-level decisions. You start taking part in those decisions, pulling strings to influence them, leaving board members perplexed. Sure. So the point I'm making to you is that if the presidency is going to undermine the NNPC board forever, then it doesn't matter how many people you make chairman or MD. Sooner or later, you'll undermine the whole board and the arrangements will break down. So which means that the people or persons who are undermining the board must change their ways first. That's why I'm saying that it's not as simple as just changing personnel.
Sure. At the end of the day, there's still an institutional issue that is built in and baked into the NNPC that has to be corrected at some point.
Yes, but what if I sound a bit cynical, and say that I don't think there's a strong commitment for NNPC to, under this government and past governments, to leave a strong NNPC, independent, taking the best decisions for the country, and so on. I don't think that intention has always been suspect. What you really have is a feeling of winner takes all. I'm at the center. Now it's my turn to manipulate NNPC, manipulate all the things that those before me manipulated. If that is your desire, then you're going to face all the old problems. You've only changed the actors.
So why
if the desire is not genuine, you follow me?
Yes.
You're going to have the same outcome.
So why should we have an NNPC then?
In fact, it's an interesting question. I have written long ago, even under the last government, not this government, I advocated that NNPC should be scrapped. Look, there are countries that produce oil, don't have a state-owned oil corporation. The UK does not have one. US does not have one. It's not true that the only way to produce oil, have an oil sector, to have an NNPC in the middle. Indeed, part of what most people will tell you is that NNPC is actually a parasite, in the sense that they are acting as joint venture partner with the oil companies, the majors. And then their contribution in that joint venture, that partnership really, is to bring in all manners of influences, state influences, attempts to manipulate things and so on, so that you could almost free the sector from this burden by rearranging things so that NNPC is just a shareholder, and that, or should I say, the Nigerian equity is held by almost Minister of Finance Incorporated. It's not true that you need a state sort of behemoth out there dabbling in everything. Some time ago, they withdrew from the downstream sector. Yes. They sold their shares then it was Unipetrol, Nolchem. They were leaving downstream sector. As soon as they finished withdrawing from it, they came back full steam into the same downstream, making new investments. Because it is all avenues, jobs for the boys. That is how people, feel a subsidy. These are all the reasons why, governments at the center never wanted to let go of NNPC. It was an instrument It was an instrument. I mean, you heard about the Halliburton scandal.
Yes.
Every scandal, past, present, future, is around NNPC. And I'm sad to say, I don't think anything has changed. It will continue, in the sense that the next government too will come thinking, if I'm at the center, part of the prize is NNPC, so I can double in NNPC and in day-to-day activities.
So let me ask you this question. I mean, we know that at the heart of many of the scandals in Nigeria has been billions and millions of naira and trillions. Is it that NNPC, is it too big to fail at this point when you're talking about the numbers we're talking about? 9 trillion naira is gone missing. Last administration, it was Sanusi screaming about $25 billion. I mean, is it just that with the trillions and billions of naira and dollars we're talking about, is NNPC just too big to even dismantle at this point?
No, NNPC can be dismantled. In fact, I think the oil industry will become very efficient if NNPC was eventually dismantled and withdrawn. What they actually do is progressive damage to our oil sector by dabbling in everything. I'm sure even all the oil majors will be relieved if they didn't have to cope with an NNPC type arrangement where every project, capex decision, everything, people want to have it politicized and they burden you. So the whole system will be free and more functional. The trouble is that does the center or does whoever is at the center have the political will to pursue that goal? And I've said it repeatedly already in this interview. If you think the price of being at the center is so that you can take over these goodies and misbehave because it's your turn, then you're not going to solve the problem. So my hope is that out of this confusion, which has now come public, the president and those around him will realize that we cannot continue like this. We have to take the high road and decide that we are going to be the first government in power that will take meaningful steps to show that we are above this nonsense. We are going to remove ourselves. We are going to make arrangements. I said earlier, find somebody or some persons you can trust. And I said again that if you cannot find one Nigerian out of 180 million to make oil minister, then perhaps you should look in the mirror and you will find a problem. Because it cannot be that you can't find one person you can trust out of 180 million Nigerians. So find that person and empower that person. That is the person you will interact with, or the persons you will interact with.
I believe the president did look in the mirror, and that's why he appointed himself as the minister. Well,
you see, then that will be a serious indictment. Then you are condemning 180 million Nigerians, and I don't buy that. It cannot be that you cannot find one person out of 180 million Nigerians.
But the reason, I mean, I think, and please, I would love your opinion. The reason the president has appointed himself as the oil minister is because at the heart of Nigeria's corruption has been oil.
I've already explained that the more files that come to your table, the less you know about the contents of each file. So actually, if you make me president of Nigeria, thank God I'm not, I'm going to beg you that I don't want 1,000 files brought to my table.
2019 is coming up.
Forget about that. Let's get serious. The point I'm making is that because I understand that the intention of those bringing me 1,000 files is so they can smuggle in all kinds of funny things that I won't do anything about, and I'll be signing. I'm going to tell you, Biola, I'm not doing that. I'm not buying that. I'm going to empower you instead. And then I'll hold you accountable and responsible. And then you render account to Nigeria and Nigerians. And then as you misbehave, I get you fired.
So let me ask you this. The Petroleum Governance Bill is, I mean, one of the things about it is that it will be able to take away the power of discretionary awards of contracts, curb some of this corruption. Once again, is that just sort of us putting another Band-Aid on a real issue, on a real, on a rotten sore here?
Until the commitment is there, the political will is there from whoever occupies the center. Aso Rock decides that they don't want to interfere day to day in the oil industry like past governments have done or past presidents. Until they buy into that, all this rewriting, new arrangements, it's all a joke. Because everything is going to come back to square one. So it's not the writing of different laws. It is whether you allow those laws to function, whether you allow persons or positions that are created by all those laws to function. Look, right now we have an NNPC board.
Yes.
The complaint of the chairman of NNPC is that he's discovering board-level appointments in Nigerian newspapers. He has to buy this day newspaper to know what's going on in NNPC. The complaint also is what? That when he calls the MD of NNPC, I said there has to be frequent communication. He says he cannot get the MD of NNPC to talk to him. That when he calls him for a meeting, he sends subordinates. Now, that's why I said that it's not as if these rules are cast in stones. It has to do, the rule is an unwritten rule that the chairman should not seek to undermine the MD. The MD should not seek to undermine the chairman. If I've never been the chairman of any board, and I'm still the chairman of some boards, and I call the MD for a meeting, he will not turn up, but will not even give me the courtesy of letting me know in advance that, oh, the thing you want to discuss, may I send Biola to represent me? Those are common courtesies. Sure. So if those common courtesies are missing, then it's just evidence that trust has broken down.
So as you can see, what you're talking about, now we're almost talking about the people at the center of the scandal. And as you know, I'm going to go back to my other question, which is sort of people feel that the reason the group managing director is undermining the Minister of State is actually an ethnic issue. And what do you say to those people?
See, I don't go down that track because I have absolutely no evidence.
But in Nigeria, we have to be honest that is...
But I only talk about things for which I have evidence. So the point I'm making is that I've heard people defend the actions of the MD of NNPC. Oh, these contracts were supposed to be approved by the contracts board, or these appointments within the MD's powers. Do you remember when I began by listing some unwritten rules about openness, about transparency, about full disclosure? If my wife were in this TV station, she would confirm that when I stopped being MD of Stanbic IBTC and I became the chairman, at various times, first thing in the morning, the MD would phone me. From the discussion, she can tell that I'm trying to get the MD off the phone. I'm telling him, no, okay, I agree, just go ahead. He's still talking to me, or she's talking to me. I said, look, just go ahead. Yes, go on. And then she's wondering, why is this MD insisting on talking to you? Because clearly you are telling the person to go ahead. It's about these unwritten rules, full disclosure, transparency, openness. So the MD is insisting, I'm about to take some controversial steps and actions. Although you're telling me, just go ahead, I'm not going to go ahead. I want your attention, Mr. Chairman, because I want you to hear the full story so there are no surprises. And if you think there's any area that I'm overstepping, you correct me now.
Sure.
Now, that's how the system works.
But the system isn't working like that.
And please believe me, if you draft 5 more laws with all these new agencies and you break all these unwritten rules, it's not going to work either.
So in the state, and I mean, right now with the rhetoric in Nigeria and the scandals, of course, the issue of restructuring continues to come up. I know you've been a member of many committees and boards, CONFAB being one of them, where the issue of restructuring came up again. How do you think this issue of restructuring that keeps recurring will help Nigerians solve anything?
You see, first of all, what are we talking about by restructuring? People use the same word, but they have different things in their minds. I think the first thing I can say is that if people did not see a problem with the current structure, perhaps there'll be no clamor for restructuring. So whether they're right or wrong, you have to begin by accepting that some people must think that there's something wrong with the current structure. Because if they all thought it was fantastic, they'll all be praising the structure. So we can ask ourselves the next question: why do some people think that the structure is not working? The general rule in any sphere of life: if a structure is not yielding the right outcome, people will always have a right to question the structure. So which means that this same structure, if it was producing rapid economic growth, producing wonderful healthcare, producing wonderful education, at that point you will say, great, let's leave this structure to run. So sometimes what happens is that the structure produces the wrong results. We are fed up with the wrong results, so we begin to question that, is this the right structure at all? Or a structure consistently produces the wrong results. It can be the fault of the structure, or it can be the fault of the persons in the structure. But I will go as far as saying that on the economic side, it is clear that on the economic side, I repeat, something is wrong with the structure. And let me explain that. Federal government level and at least 2/3 of the states of Nigeria, almost 100% of the revenue that they receive is consumed in recurrent expenditure. not leaving 1 naira for capex. So which means that there's no money to use to finance development. All the money is consumed by the bureaucracy on their own needs. Now, I've not heard anybody say they want that to continue. So which means that on the economic side, there seems to be clarity that we cannot have an arrangement where the entire revenues are consumed on civil servants and the bureaucracy.
Yes.
Or to put it differently and more stark in the reality, what we're really saying is that less than 3% of Nigerians who are in the public sector employed consume 100% of Nigeria's revenue. So the balance of 97% to which I belong and you belong are watching them as they consume everything. Now tell me, can that structure prevail?
Of course not.
Now it is partly the continuation of that defunct structure that gave us things like Boko Haram. Because effectively, you get the point I'm making. Because effectively, there was no development. People were not improving their incomes. They were getting nothing. Only a handful of civil servants were consuming everything. So after a while, people start taking up arms. Somebody comes and says, I'll give you food, I'll give you water, follow me. They hold the gun. Then the guy thinks, well, you're offering me nothing, and government, you're offering me nothing, except unemployment. This other guy's offering me something, food, water, whatever, and so the point I'm making is that on the economic side, it's clear that we need some restructuring. Now, there's a link between the political and the economic. It's as follows. We took a political arrangement, which we borrowed largely from the US, which you are very familiar with, which is actually an expensive political structure. You have 2 sets of houses, House of Rep, Senate, then we have 36 states and all that. So we copied many things from one of the richest countries in the world.
So I am going to ask you to wrap up soon, because I really want you to give your final word on what's next for
So
NNPC.
therefore, we took a very expensive structure and we're trying to make it work. Yes. When the price of oil was 100, we probably had a slim chance of making it work. When the price of oil collapsed, the expensive structure is now coming back to haunt us. So that's how I link the issue of restructuring and so on. So those who say, let's not discuss restructuring, when you break it down on the economic side, they agree with you that something has to change.
Thank you so much for always being so informative and for being with us this morning. I think that at the end of the day, restructuring means different things for different people, and thank you for really breaking that down. That brings us to the end of our show this morning. I'm Biola Alabi. Thank you once again to my esteemed guest, Mr. Atedo Peterside, the founder and chairman of ANAP Business Jets Limited, for honoring us. Keep watching all throughout the day. That's it from me, Biola Alabi.